All right, let me ask you something simple but super important. How many of you charged your phones last night? Why? Because without power, your phone is basically a shiny brick, right? Now think about this. What charges you? Not just sleep or coffee, but actual power of your body. How does your heart keep beating, your brain keep thinking, and your muscles keep moving even when you're asleep? Here's the answer. Your cells are constantly generating energy, and they do it using a process called cellular respiration. Something happening in your body right now in trillions of cells every second of the day. Today, we're going to discuss two of the most exciting parts of this process, the Krebs cycle and the electron transport chain. Don't worry, this isn't just biology jargon. Today, we're going to discuss two of the most exciting parts of this process, the Krebs cycle and the electron transport chain. Don't worry, this isn't just biology jargon. I'll show you how your body is basically like a power plant, turning food into fuel using some pretty amazing science. Quick question. What powers your phone? Of course, it's the battery. Now, what powers you? Just like your phone needs a battery, you need energy to function. But it's not just for running or thinking. Every single one of your cells needs energy to grow, divide, repair themselves, and even just stay alive. So, where do we get that energy? Of course, from food, specifically glucose, a type of sugar found in all the food we eat. Let's take a peek under the hood. This is the process your body uses to turn glucose into energy. Here's the formula. Glucose plus oxygen will yield carbon dioxide, water, and ATP. This is called cellular respiration, and it has three main parts. First is glycolysis. Next is Krebs cycle and electron transport chain, or ETC. Let's zoom in on the last two. Have you ever heard of the mitochondria? Of course, you've probably heard it called the powerhouse of the cell, and that's not just a meme, it's actually true. The Krebs cycle and the ETC both happen inside the mitochondria, so you can think of it like your body's energy power plant. Let's start with the Krebs cycle, also known as the citric acid cycle. Now, what's the purpose? To take those pyruvate molecules from glycolysis and squeeze out high-energy electrons. For the inputs, we have 2-pyruvate, which become acetyl-CoA, NAD+, and FAD, like empty battery packs, and ADP, which is ready to be turned into ATP. For the outputs, we have carbon dioxide. You exhale this, NADH and FADH₂, which are charged up battery packs, and a little bit of ATP. We will now discuss Krebs cycle step by step. Don't worry, we're not memorizing every enzyme here, just the big idea. First, the acetyl-CoA enters the cycle. Combines with a 4-carbon molecule called oxaloacetate to form a 6-carbon molecule called citric acid. This is where the cycle gets its other name, Citric Acid Cycle. Citric acid is rearranged and oxidized. 1 carbon is removed as carbon dioxide. 1 NAD plus picks up electrons to become NADH. Another carbon is removed. Another carbon dioxide is released. Another NADH is made. ATP is produced. A little bit of energy is used to make 1 ATP directly. Next is more electron carriers are charged up. FAD becomes FADH₂, another electron carrier, and one more NADH is made. Then the cycle resets. The 4-carbon molecule is regenerated, the oxaloacetate ready to join a new acetyl-CoA. Now let's talk about the electron transport chain. This is where the real ATP payoff happens. The NADH and FADH₂ from the Krebs cycle are carrying high-energy electrons. They head to the inner membrane of the mitochondria, which acts like a high-voltage power line. Now here's how it works. Electrons are passed down a chain of proteins in the membrane. This causes protons, or H+, to be pumped out across the membrane, building up pressure. Eventually, the electrons reach oxygen, which grabs them along with some protons and forms water. The pressure from all those protons flows back through a protein called ATP synthase. This works like a turbine or water wheel, cranking out ATP as protons flow through. For the step 1 is the electron delivery. NADH and FADH₂ drop off high-energy electrons to proteins embedded in the inner mitochondrial membrane. For the step 2, electrons flow down the chain. Electrons are passed from one protein to the next like a hot potato. As they move, their energy is used to pump hydrogen ions or protons from the matrix to the space between the mitochondrial membranes. This creates a high concentration of H+ outside the inner membrane, like building a pressure behind a dam. For the step 3, at the end of the chain, oxygen grabs the used up electrons and H+ ions, forming water. This is why you need oxygen to keep the chain moving. No oxygen, the whole ATC backs up, no ATP, which means a serious problem. With step 4, ATP synthase, the turbine, the build-up protons H+ now flow back into the matrix through a special enzyme called ATP synthase. As they flow, ATP synthase spins like a water wheel or turbine and uses that movement to convert ADP into ATP. This is where the big energy payoff happens. Final ETC totals per glucose is approximately 34 ATP. Water as byproduct uses oxygen as the final electron acceptor. Now this part is amazing. As those protons spin the ATP synthase turbine, it makes up to 34 ATP molecules per glucose. So while glycolysis gave us 2 ATP, the ETC is where we get the big energy reward. And remember, oxygen is key. Without it, the ETC can't run. Oxygen is like the final electron catcher. If there's no oxygen, the electrons now have nowhere to go. The whole system's back up, no ETC, no ATP. That's why we breathe, to keep this chain moving. So when you inhale, you're literally keeping your cellular power lines running. Let's bring it all together with a metaphor. Cell is the power plant, glucose is the fuel, Krebs cycle is the refinery, which breaks down fuel into usable parts. ETC is the power lines and turbines, and ATP is the electricity that powers your life. Without this system, our bodies would just be piles of ingredients, not functioning machines. And let's zoom out and see how this matters in real life. Athletes, they train to improve how efficiently their cells make ATP, especially under low oxygen, like sprinting. With mitochondrial diseases, when the power plants of your cells don't work properly, it affects every part of your body. And with cyanide poisoning, cyanide blocks the ETC, shutting down ATP production. That's why it's so deadly. It turns off the power instantly. So let's connect the dots. You eat food, your body turns it into glucose. If there's oxygen, Krebs cycle plus ETC equals a fuel or a full tank of energy. You make up 34 ATP per glucose molecule. So next time you take a deep breath, run to class, or even daydream during a lecture, just know your cells are out here working full time, turning sugar into power. And it all starts with glycolysis. Thanks for listening. See you in the next module. Bye bye.